But Vice President Kamala Harris spent her entire Sunday in Philadelphia making a pitch to Black and Latino voters. She visited a church, a barbershop, a bookstore, and a Puerto Rican restaurant before holding a rally at a youth basketball facility. During her address, the vice president slammed her opponent for his dark rhetoric and promised to win the election.
We have an opportunity before us to turn the page on the fear and the divisiveness that have characterized our politics for a decade because of Donald Trump. We have the ability to turn the page on that same old tired playbook because we are exhausted with it. And we are ready to chart a new way forward. And yes, we will be joyful in the process. Philly, we've got 9 days. 9 days. 9 days left in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. And we know this is going to be a tight race until the very end. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. But we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is joyful work. And make no mistake, we will win. We will win. We will win. For the next 9 days, no one can sit on the sidelines. There is too much on the line, and we must not wake up the day after the election and have any regrets about what we could have done in these next 9 days. We are fighting for a future of our nation where we tap into the ambitions and the aspirations and the dreams of the American people. We are a new generation of leadership that is optimistic and excited about what our nation can do together. And the great thing about living in a democracy, as long as we keep it, is that we, the people, have the power to choose the direction of our country and its leadership. The power is with the people.
The power is with the people, not one man. Rev, I'm sorry, but talk about taking you to church. Taking you to church. Mika's talking about the grimness that she saw at the rally last night in this campaign and being troubled by it. I just know one of your favorite Bible verses is, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And joy cometh in the morning to those who study to show themselves approved, a worker who's not ashamed in front of the Lord. Weeping may endure for a night. If you're looking at that rally and it depresses you, and the campaign, it depresses you, but work hard because joy cometh in the morning.
And the key word you're saying there is work hard. Because when you see, just imagine if you're a Puerto Rican child or black child looking at that rally at the garden. You should not become depressed. You ought to be, in many ways, energized that we've got to stop this. I looked at that and said, I could now look at how Jewish kids looked at the 1939 rally in Madison Square Garden. That pain has to be turned into you being empowered. And we've got a few days left to turn that around. When people will openly and proudly go and fill up Madison Square Garden and say the things they said, it should make you go to work, not go in your shell.
Right. And you really do wonder, parents who are proud Americans, who are raising their children to be proud Americans, who are from Puerto Rico, what do they say to their children after hearing that? It's really, I mean, my God, it just makes me sad as an American that Puerto Rican parents, that Americans who are from Puerto Rico are having to talk to their children this morning before they go to school so they won't be bullied because what was said at Donald Trump's rally last night. Let's bring in managing editor of The Bulwark, Sam Stein, and the MSNBC contributor and author of the book, How the Right Lost Its Mind, Charlie Sykes. Well, Charlie, your book, it book title just says it all this morning. Again, everything that Ronald Reagan taught this Republican Party, our Republican Party, that led him to winning 49 states, that led him to a landslide victory in 1980, that allowed him to bring Americans together as he led the Reagan Revolution. All of those ideas were thrown out years ago as being irrelevant. They seem more relevant today than ever before, because if you want to reach an older man in Wisconsin, that's not how you do it. You do it by talking the way Reagan talked. And when it comes to immigration, talking about a country that opens its doors to the world, who still believes that it is a city shining on a hill brightly for all the world to see. That's it. Charlie, that's how we used to think when our Republican Party was our Republican Party, when it was Reagan's Republican Party.
You know, for the last 9 years, I have used that passage and read it to folks who are saying that somehow this is a continuation of conservatism, or what Ronald Reagan talked about. Ronald Reagan, you can't even imagine those words being spoken in Madison Square Garden last night. You can't even imagine any speaker saying anything remotely like that. Now, you asked an interesting question. What do the parents of Puerto Rican children tell their children about what they heard last night? What does any parent tell any child about the kind of hate and vulgarity and offensiveness and racism and insults that you heard last night? This is a hell of a closing argument that we're seeing right now, and I hope that we don't get numb to it, because what you saw last night was not a disciplined or a coherent campaign. This is Donald Trump's id, and we need to take that both literally and seriously. The threats he's making, the insults, the culture he's created, and I guess that's really what struck me. And to Mika's point, you know, that after 9 years, he has created a political culture where you can fill Madison Square Garden with people who listen to that and say, yeah, that's the message I like. 47% of Americans think, yes, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with the mass deportations. I'm okay with the attacks on Latinos and Puerto Ricans and Jews, and, you know, talking about pimps and the attacks on Kamala Harris. I mean, this is a dark moment that we have right now, but I'm really glad that you're playing kind of the split screen of the closing arguments of the two campaigns, because I don't think the contrast could be much starker.
So Sam, let's talk a bit more about Kamala Harris and what she has to do, because a lot of time gets spent speaking about Donald Trump, and indeed she spends a lot of time speaking about Donald Trump as well. She's got this big speech on the Ellipse tomorrow night, on Tuesday night, a week out from the election. And the choice, I guess, for her campaign that they have to make is how much of this time is spent, as they have done over the last week or so, directing some of the message to Donald Trump and the threat that he poses, and how much of it is spent on her agenda and what she would offer to Americans. I know there's some debate within the campaign about the balance that is right for that. What are you expecting from tomorrow night?
Yeah, there is debate in the campaign. Obviously, she's leaned in more heavily to the Trump contrast in recent days and weeks. I think part of that is because, frankly, it's been presented to her on a tee, right? When Trump says the enemy within, and he references Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff, when John Kelly says, yeah, he's fascistic, when we get these anecdotes about his praise of Hitler's generals. I mean, how do you not swing at that pitch, right? At the same time, if you look at any of the ad data and what they're running television ads on, it's pretty much economic focused and stuff like that, trying to sell her in an affirmative sense. So it's more of an either and, not an either or. Tomorrow night, I think she's going to make the contrast, and the key, I suppose, for her is the setting is the Ellipse, right? Like, the setting is, this is where Donald Trump incited the insurrection on January 6th. That's not accidental. They want to have that contrast. The question she has is, can she tie that contrast into an affirmative case for her campaign? Can she say to the voters, look, this is why you have to vote for me, because, you know, these are the things at stake, and I can do X, Y, and Z. Let me just add one thing. I know the question was everything's about Trump and we should talk about Harris. I do need to say that, to Charlie's point, to Mika's point, The thing, and this is something for Harris to consider too, tomorrow night or Tuesday night, yeah. The thing that was striking about yesterday to me was what wasn't there, which was 4 years ago, if Trump had held a rally in Madison Square Garden, I suspect there would have been a huge backlash in New York City, counter protests, anger, things in the street. Nothing there. Didn't happen last night. Leading up to the rally, what we saw, in fact, was the CEOs have warmed up to Trump. A major publisher of a newspaper, Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, pulled the endorsement. The people who are the guardrails, or would have been the guardrails in past runs, are not there right now. And I think for Harris, on Tuesday night, that is a point she can make, which is, look, we are the guardrails. This is it. And Trump is talking about enemies within. He's talking about using the military against American citizens. If we vote for this, he will have the license to do it because he ran on it and we voted for it. That's his mandate. And if she can make that case tomorrow night, I think that might be effective.